What happened yesterday? Attorney General Pam Bondi was grilled at a Senate hearing on Tuesday. She was very combative throughout, mostly to the Democratic senators, but even to some of her Republican colleagues. And she used almost every opportunity she had in her responses, in between the yelling, to just glaze President Trump up and down. Let's watch.
Will you
You don't have to
support?
tell me what is my decision,
Well,
what is not my decision. I said
and
you
you
can
don't
talk
have
to Director
you don't
Patel.
have to. I believe the American people should be able to see that video or audio tape. Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump for trying to impeach
the
him?
answer is, this is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my
Oh,
time
well,
is over.
you've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your
You can attack me later,
career.
and I.
Why is our Attorney General asking for an apology to President Trump? Why is the Attorney General keeping score of who has attacked President Trump politically over the years? Why is our Attorney General acting like this? Because Trump demands blind loyalty of the strictest standard to him over the Constitution, over the rights of the people, et cetera, et cetera. That's what he demands. And also because he rewards those in his cabinet, Republicans on the Hill, MAGA influencers in the media. He rewards those who glaze him the most. There is a direct correlation between the amount of praise you offer President Trump and the opportunities and goodwill he will provide back to you. That's how he works. He is as transactional as they come. And that's why we have an attorney general who acts like this at her Senate hearing. Lindsey Graham and Josh Hawley, both Republican senators, used their time with Pam Bondi to express concern over the FBI investigating call logs of certain Republicans who were involved in and around January 6th.
Can you tell me why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me?
I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. That's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators, because who knows why?
Who knows why? Okay, so much here. First of all, the FBI was revealed they didn't tap the phones of these 8 Republican senators. They were looking at the call logs, who was calling who in and out, incoming. They didn't know, and they weren't surveilling what they were actually saying on the calls or the text messages. Second of all, there's no evidence, there's no proof that Joe Biden directed the FBI under his Department of Justice to look into these senators. There's no proof of that. There's no proof that this was political retribution against people who Joe Biden thought, Republicans that Joe Biden thought were acting against him. There's no proof of that. We do have proof in the past couple days and weeks that Donald Trump, because he's posting about it openly, is asking his Department of Justice to go after, to look into, to investigate, to prosecute people who he perceives have wronged him in the past. We do have proof of that Donald Trump is wielding his Department of Justice as he sees fit, because he is a vengeful little bitch. We don't have any proof that Joe Biden did that here. Senator Hawley here saying, who knows why? Senator Graham asking why his phone logs were looked into between January 4th and 7th, 2021. Guys, it's because the Department of Justice had just witnessed an attempted coup on the government of the United States, and they were afraid because of your rhetoric, your involvement in and around the president and the White House between January 4th and 7th, 2021. They were afraid you might have been in on it because you were acting hella supportive of the coup that took place on January 6th, 2021. That's why. What they're referring to was tweeted out here by another Republican senator, Chuck Grassley from Iowa. This document shows the Biden FBI spied on 8 of my Republican Senate colleagues during the investigation into the elector case against Trump. Here's the case file. You can see highlighted the Republican senators who were looked into by the FBI. They were probably extra interested because of how not only supportive of what was going on you seemed to be, but how suspicious you were acting in your communication with Donald Trump, whether or not you intended to, because we know now that Donald Trump was using a burner phone before, during, and after January 6th. He was calling the people on this list and other Republicans on a burner phone, which displayed Spam Risk Egypt as the caller ID. We know this. We know this from the investigation. We know this from witness testimony. We know this because some of these people have admitted it. Spam Risk Egypt. So I don't think it's unreasonable that the Department of Justice and the FBI was just crossing everything off the list and making sure that none of these people were in fact orchestrating the insurrection from the inside. I think that's a very reasonable thing to check off their list. Pam Bondi had a difficult time also maintaining sharp answers on the Epstein issue. Let's see.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you.
Did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that? Okay.
In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review. Why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet.
Okay, and let's see what she said back in February.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
All right. Why is Pam Bondi, why is our Attorney General having such a difficult time with something that seems like it would be so simple and easy? Because we don't have an independent Attorney General. We don't have an independent Department of Justice. We have a Department of Justice and an Attorney General who does not pursue truth and justice for the American people. Her only job that she sees is pursuing the utmost comfort and contentness and happiness of Donald Trump. She believes that the Department of Justice is to be Donald Trump's personal law firm. And that's it. She is not an independent cabinet member. She is not an independent law enforcement officer or agent. She's not working on our behalf. She's working for one man, no matter the cost to the nation or her own dignity or whatever else is ruined and soiled by a Justice Department that acts like the president's personal law enforcement agency. My prediction from all this with Pamela here, I think she eventually gets rolled, whether it's under pressure from Donald Trump himself and he just gets fed up with her, whether it's under pressure from Republicans who are quite interested in the Epstein Files themselves and start to pressure her, even though they should be putting their pressure on the guy who runs this lady. She's just getting pressured from too many sides, and I think she's obviously is having a difficult time handling some pretty basic questions. So when the heat gets turned up even more, I think Pam Bondi, one way or the other, gets squeezed and gets rolled. Yesterday, air traffic control centers across the country experienced staffing shortages, with the FAA letting airlines know that there would be delays and letting pilots know that the procedures for how they should contact air traffic control would be changing due to the government shutdown. You can see here a map tweeted out by Flight Radar of delays due to the shortages in Chicago, Nashville, Texas, the Northeast. Why? Again, why is the government shutdown happening? Well, Republicans and Democrats cannot agree on whether or not to extend government subsidies for Obamacare, meaning the government is using taxpayer money to help fund and subsidize insurance plans on the Affordable Care Act marketplace so that premiums for Americans are much less than they could be. Now, not all, but most Republicans are holding out on wanting to address the subsidies now. They say they want to deal with it later on this year, whereas Democrats want to ensure the subsidies get extended now and not bank on or risk the chance of Republicans flaking down the road and not actually extending the subsidies and making sure that these premiums don't skyrocket for a bunch of Americans. Now, interesting, Senator Pat Murray, she's a Democrat, She tweeted out, "Here are the 10 states that will see the highest premium increases for families if the tax credits are not extended for Obamacare. West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Tennessee, Mississippi, Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, and the Dakotas." She says to their senators, no. Now, if you hadn't picked up on it, these are all red or extremely red states that Republican senators and Congress people are fighting to punish the constituents in these states with much, much higher premiums. Those percentages, as extravagant as they look, they're hard to kind of wrap your mind around. If you look at numbers here, an example in Minnesota, a couple in their 60s making 90 grand a year, just under, currently pays about $500 a month for health care on the Obamacare marketplace. If the subsidies lapse, the same couple in their 60s, near retirement age, making just under 90 grand a year, will pay $2,000 a month, or an increase of $24,000 for healthcare insurance. They make 90 grand a year. So you can see a map here again. It's the red states and the constituents, the Americans in red states, represented by the senators and the congresspeople who are fighting to let this happen, who will be hurt the most. My prediction on this is that Republicans will fold. They are already starting to fold. You've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You've got people like the Senate Majority Leader John Thune already showing that they are willing to wiggle on this, and that usually means that a couple weeks, a couple of days from now, they will start to fold. On Tuesday, the Texas National Guard arrived in Chicago. Texas Governor Greg Abbott deployed members of the Texas National Guard to Chicago at President Trump's request, in an attempt, as they put it, to help quell crime in the area, as well as to assist ICE and the Department of Homeland Security in immigration enforcement. The National Guard historically has been used for things like disaster response, first aid after a natural disaster, quelling riots or public disobedience, civil disobedience in cities, training troops of foreign nations. Like I think the California National Guard helped train some of Ukraine's troops after Russia invaded. The National Guard was not designed or created or was maintained or is maintained for the purpose which it is being used for now. Why? Most libs on my side will go the Trump wants to be a dictator explanation route. Like, of course, he's got a warm feeling in his heart for being a dictator. I don't think that's what this is. I can see that coming more to play when elections roll around next year for midterms or in 2028 for the presidential election. I can see Trump and Republicans deploying the National Guard to make voting more difficult in places where they want to make it more intimidating to vote in places where they want that to happen, to determine maybe whether mail-in ballots are counted the way that they should be or things like that. I can see the really fascist, dictatorial drive behind this coming to fruition when elections roll around. I just truly feel right now that this is a manifestation of the continued, constant, tale as old as time paranoia that crime is just rampant in neighborhoods, no matter what the stats say, no matter if these troops are being deployed to neighborhoods where crime is even a real problem. This just seems like a response to the forever obsession with quelling crime, whether or not it actually exists in certain places. And Donald Trump thinks that this is just the most obvious, efficient solution to that. My prediction for where this ends up, I think this gets bad. I think this escalates and ends badly. When you have guys like this deploying to cities where they have no training on how to deal with civilians, they have no training on how to de-escalate a situation, they have no training on law enforcement on American streets, on collecting evidence if a crime were to occur, on being detectives, acting like detectives. These people have no training in what they've been deployed to do. And when they are behind the protection of these masks and have the courage that these masks afford them, and the mandate from their bosses in the federal government to basically act with impunity, I just think with men rolling around cities like this, it will eventually end poorly, with Americans getting hurt or worse. Finally, yesterday, Johnson & Johnson was ordered to pay a $966 million, almost $1 billion and damages and punitive damages in their latest talc lawsuit and a long string of lawsuits that Johnson & Johnson has faced. Why? Well, Johnson & Johnson allegedly, I don't know if I have to say allegedly, but just in case I will, they allegedly knew that their product contained these toxic chemicals that they produced and distributed anyway. And how this happens in America, it happens in businesses across industries, and it's a very simple daily calculation that companies in America make. And it's that there is a lag in the legal consequences that they will face for putting out an unethical or an unsafe product or service. There is a lag in the legal or reputational consequences that a company will face. The lawsuit might not come for 5-10 years. And in that time, the company believes and calculates that it will make such obscene amounts of money on this unsafe, unethical product, whatever. Their market cap will explode so exponentially that once the consequences eventually catch up, it'll be a drop in the bucket to the revenue that this heinous product or service brought in, and they will be able to easily bear the brunt of the consequences that they are made to pay or face. And this is a calculation the companies in America have made for a very long time and will continue to, as long as regulations, which are very important, they get in the way all the time, sometimes for no good reason, but sometimes for very good reason. If regulations aren't strict enough and companies are allowed to put things out like this, and if the legal system continues to work in a way where there is such a lag to be able to handle whatever penalty comes their way, this will continue to happen. And it's bad enough when it's something like baby powder giving women cancer. But what happens when it's these technology companies like Meta, Facebook, or these AI companies, and the products that they're putting out are infinitely more corrosive and damaging to society and humans' existence as we know it. And they put out products that they know are bad, that they know will have possibly existentially catastrophic consequences, but they don't care because they know how this works. They know how this formula works. They know how to calculate this game.